I think when we talk about a successful cybersecurity program, one of the key components is having some form of metric, right, that you can track. Because if you don't know if it's being effective, you don't know if it's changing behavior, you're kind of working in sort of a gray area, and you want to have more clarity.
From Tyler Technologies, it's the Tyler Tech Podcast, your source for insightful conversations with thought leaders addressing key issues impacting the public sector today. I'm Josh Henderson, a member of the corporate marketing team here at Tyler, and we are glad to have you with us. In each episode, we explore the technologies, trends, and strategies that are shaping our communities and highlight the people and innovations driving progress in the public sector. If you enjoy the podcast, please consider giving us a 5-star rating, subscribing on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen, and sharing the show with others. As you might already know, October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and we wanted to celebrate a little early by bringing you an episode exploring how human behavior plays a vital role in cybersecurity. On today's episode, we're joined by cybersecurity expert and account executive here at Tyler, Sam Hamilton, who shares strategies for building a strong cybersecurity culture, tailoring training to specific risks, and measuring the effectiveness of your organization's security efforts. Whether you're looking to enhance your cybersecurity initiatives or better understand the role of employee behavior in preventing cyber threats, this episode is packed with practical tips and valuable takeaways. We hope you enjoy the episode. All right, Sam, thank you so much for joining me today on the Tyler Tech Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. So let's just start off with, some of the key components you feel are an effective cybersecurity workforce, are part of an effective cybersecurity workforce education program.
Sure. One thing that's really important for our clients and organizations in general when it comes to cybersecurity awareness is looking at your program as a whole, right? And not just one piece or one-time type training. You need to be doing continuous education. You need to be trying different things. So when we talk about what's most important for clients, ultimately the answer is multiple things, right? There's no silver bullet. There's no one thing you do. But what's important is you engage with it over time and kind of track metrics for how folks have improved, right? So an example of that would be if you have, a phishing type training, right? So email phishing, where you're sending spoof emails to employees and seeing if they're clicking on them or if they're reporting them appropriately. Having metrics associated with that to see improvement over time is very important, right? Because obviously if you have metrics that go the other way, where they're not improving over time, it raises red flags about the type of awareness training you're doing. Other things that are really important is to find ways to really tailor the program to your organization's specific risks, right? So for our public sector clients, what that looks like, if you're a school district, you really ought to have cyber awareness training that relates to student data, student protection, stuff that's more specific to schools versus, a courts and justice type client is going to want, questions concerning, honestly, going back to youth, going to like juvenile records, right? If that's an area that's a high risk of exposure, you want to make sure that that's part of those stories, right? To make it relatable for your employees.
That's great. Can you share some successful strategies you've seen for educating employees about cybersecurity?
Yeah. Going back to tailoring specific stories for your clients, finding ways to do that storytelling that helps connect the dots versus just, you need to pay attention to what is being sent to your inbox. You need to pay attention to vulnerability management, being able to tell a story of, for example, a superintendent was looking at their email and they received a request from what they thought was, their director of finance for an authorization on, a specific wire of accounts. There's a couple different ways of trying to explain it, but the main point was, this happened. It could happen to anybody. And what you're looking at the end of the day is, why is this something that you are potentially at risk for? Being able to answer that question through story tends to be a lot better than just saying, email phishing is happening, right? Be like, this can happen to anybody. It's not a matter of if, but when it comes to some form of cyber risk, some form of cyber threat. And awareness training is, one of many pieces that kind of goes into that.
Yeah. And just to let you know, just putting it on the record, I've never failed any of those compliance tests.
Folks who work in cybersecurity do fail them. That's part of the question, where it's like you want to be able to relate to folks and say you're never going to be perfect when it comes to this, right. But it comes down to like the culture of awareness and being like thinking first about is this something that I should be clicking on? Is this something that's legitimate? If that's in the front of your mind, it's going to go a long way.
Right. Now, how do information security policies contribute to an organization's overall cybersecurity initiatives?
Sure. Something that we say all the time is you cannot enforce a policy that does not exist. You can't follow a plan that hasn't been written yet. And so when you are looking at an effective cybersecurity program, an effective cybersecurity awareness training program, kind of within that, it needs to be backed up with specific policy, right? And so a good example would be acceptable use policy, right? What technology can our employees use? What sort of software or, sites could they access on a work laptop? If you don't have that clearly written out, you can't enforce it. You can't teach to it. And so those are the types of things where you really want to have things backed up in policy, then as well in action, so you can kind of enforce that, and then through education on top of that. All of that kind of has to go together. If you have conflicts there or things are out of date, it's going to cause more confusion. It could cause more issues for employees.
And now you touched on this a little bit already, but can you just give us some examples of ways in which you can empower employees to kind of think more clearly about this stuff or to make better choices about?
Yeah, something that we talk about frequently, and it's really exciting for our employees, or not our employees, but for our clients when they kind of get to the point of having a more active cybersecurity culture where they have employees that feel empowered to come and talk to IT about questions. A good example is, one of our clients we were speaking with that recently started a more robust training program. They used to do it biannually. Now they're doing it annually with certificates, right, that they actually print out for their employees. The woman I was speaking to was like, honestly, just having those certificates where they print them out, they get to put them on their desk. They're proud of them. They get to show off, be like, look, I got it. I finished it. Ways in which you're kind of encouraging folks to feel more empowered, feel like they're engaging with it. Often the positive reinforcement goes a long way. We've had some clients that'll say, we put out a monthly email blast for the folks that all passed, right, the phishing engagement or they completed their training. Sometimes they're giving out gift cards, things like that for coffee, or they're doing special events where it's like this division, all completed their cybersecurity awareness training on time. Therefore, they get XYZ. That positive reinforcement goes a long way.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of the Tyler Tech Podcast. I hope you're enjoying listening to this episode of the Tyler Tech Podcast. I'm here with my colleague Jay Champion to talk about the importance of tech modernization. Are you struggling to maintain your legacy systems? It might be time for a change.
That's right, Josh. We just released a white paper that outlines the 5 main risks of legacy systems and the benefits of modernizing your digital infrastructure.
From security weaknesses to inefficiencies and high maintenance costs, legacy systems can really hold back government agencies. So what are some of the benefits of future-proofing with an updated tech stack?
Modern cloud-based solutions help to streamline processes, protect against cyber threats, improve the resident experience, meet compliance requirements, and provide more scalability.
Are you ready to leave your legacy systems behind and improve your digital services? Check out our show notes for resources to help you get started, and reach out to us at podcast@tylertech.com to connect with a Tyler expert today. Now, let's get back to the Tyler Tech Podcast. That's great. And now, so that's the employee side of things. From the organization side of things, what are the best ways you've seen in measuring those results, or what are you looking for in a positive result?
Yeah,
on that end?
I think when we talk about a successful cybersecurity program, one of the key components is having some form of metric, right, that you can track. Because if you don't know if it's being effective, you don't know if it's changing behavior, you're kind of working in sort of a gray area, and you want to have more clarity. You're not always going to get that with cybersecurity training because it is very one-to-one with individuals. But different tools, automated tools that have the ability to track both completion of training, track the sort of phishing engagement type metrics that I was talking about, having that as part of your planning and then making decisions based on those results. You want to be able to switch things up year to year. There's some things that are always going to be constant, but you want to be, for example, if you are doing a cybersecurity awareness training and data privacy is really an area that you're having issues with based on results or based on how folks, fill out the quiz, being able to add more information about that the next year is really a good way to show success, right? That shows that you're growing as an organization, you're targeting those areas. And organizational leaders that actually engage with that and think about it that way are going much further in terms of success with their program than the folks that are just doing it to check the box. And that's really what we look to see, right? It's like the actual active engagement, continuous improvement piece.
Right. And now, of course, at Tyler, we deal with the public sector exclusively. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of challenges involved in working in the public sector, whether it's workforce shortages or budgetary constraints and things like that. What have you seen as some common challenges that organizations face in that regard when implementing cybersecurity awareness training programs, and how can they overcome them?
Yeah, I think a classic example, and this is something that folks that are working in cybersecurity would understand very well. When you come up upon, this is your annual, cybersecurity awareness time, you got to do these automated classes. It's not hard to mute the classes, run them in the background, to skip the videos sometimes and just go right to the quiz, right? And be like, I don't need to engage with this because I've done this before. I've talked with CISOs that do this. I am guilty of doing this at times where it's like, I have too many things going on, but I need to get this done. So that sort of putting it as not a priority is one of those main challenges where it's like, oh, I got to roll my eyes and I got to go through this. It's a waste of my time. It's not a waste of your time, but if the material is not engaging in a certain fashion, it's going to cause that sort of effect, right? So one of the ways to overcome that is to sort of supplement those automated training tools with more creative challenges. Here at Tyler Technologies, we do, during Cybersecurity Awareness Month, different challenges that are kind of sent to employees. There's sort of quizzes, games, there's rewards for that. Another big sort of method that we would push for clients is actual instructor-led training. Classroom environments where there's more time for questions and answers. Folks don't feel like they're, kind of just sitting on their laptop at home or in the office, kind of going through the motions. That Q&A and interactive piece goes a long way of helping folks connect the dots, right? So if we talk about cybersecurity, it's like, well, how does this relate to me? It's like, well, have you ever received a text message in the past, I don't know, week, 2 weeks that says USPS tried to deliver a package to your house and it sends a link with it? That's an example of, a phishing scam, right? Mm-hmm. Ultimately, they're looking to make money from you in some fashion. It's going to be a couple steps along the way, but being able to connect the dots of like, it's happening in my personal life, it's happening in my professional life. It's not going away. Finding ways to get folks to hear that could take a bunch of different methods. Mm-hmm. Everyone has different learning styles, but for our employees, they just need to have different methods of consuming that information. So for business leaders, unfortunately, you just do the one thing, press the box, and it's going to work out. You have to engage with it in different platforms.
That's really great advice. Just kind of want to close things out now with sort of a sustainability question in terms of cybersecurity and cybersecurity awareness. But how can organizations ensure that these education programs stay relevant and effective over time?
It's a great question. We've worked with clients that'll have, and they still have, policies around beeper usage or the fax machine. Some folks still are using fax machines, totally fine. And they're not necessarily being updated to keep up with times. And currently, right, with AI and generative AI tools, you have to be very current to kind of get an idea, right? So for example, with cybersecurity, a big concern that's going to continue is AI spoofed voice calls, right? Where it's like it doesn't take much in terms of having some form of recording. This podcast is a good example. This is enough sort of, voice from both of us that somebody could very easily use an AI tool to spoof our voice and then, place a phone call with that. You need to inform clients of that, right? You need to inform your employees of that rather. And so keeping your program up to date, what's nice is when you work with a third party, like if you're working with Tyler Technologies, for example, or you're working with another platform that uses tools, we're actively making sure that we're keeping material up to date, right? You want it to both be engaging, but you also need it to be something that's relevant, right? And AI is something that's moving very quickly, especially when it comes to different threat vectors. So education around that is key. And so making sure that continuous improvement is front of mind when it comes to anything you're doing with cybersecurity, but specifically awareness training is incredibly important.
I feel like that's the perfect place to end it.
All right.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
I'll be back again soon.
Yeah. Sounds great. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Sam Hamilton. If you'd like to learn more about cybersecurity best practices and other topics we covered in this episode, Be sure to check out our show notes for additional resources. As cybersecurity threats continue to evolve, it's more important than ever for public sector organizations to build a strong culture of cybersecurity awareness. From training employees to stay vigilant, to developing policies that safeguard sensitive information, there are many ways to protect your organization from emerging threats. Tyler Technologies provides solutions designed exclusively for the public sector, with experts ready to support your organization in navigating these complex challenges. If you're interested in learning more or have questions, we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out to us at podcast@tylertech.com to connect with a subject matter expert. Whether it's strengthening your cybersecurity program, adopting new technology, or exploring another topic entirely, we want to know what you'd like to hear on future episodes. Fill out our audience survey in the show notes to share your feedback, and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. For Tyler Technologies, I'm Josh Henderson. Thanks for joining us on the Tyler Tech Podcast.